Hello, welcome to my channel or welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Kitty and today I am talking to one of the legends of the hardcore world, John Porcelly from bands like Youth of Today and Judge, etc. And we're talking about sneakers and streetwear, so let's get into it.
Welcome to my YouTube channel.
I am a massive hardcore fan. The hardcore world has had a very big impact on me growing up. I am vegan. I'm not straight edge, although technically I am, but I don't ever claim it. I'm not a big drinker, and the straight edge movement had a big sort of impact on me in terms of the way I think about life. And the music just is very influential to me. Also, that being said, the way that they dress has massively impacted and influenced me. Just like any culture, subculture, subgenre, genres, etc. that people get into, everything about it can influence your life if you're really into something. So listening to a certain kind of music can influence the way that you dress, obviously. Even liking certain kinds of movies can influence the way that you dress. And I am big on talking about stuff like that here on YouTube and on my social media, all over the internet. So there's been this crazy thing that's been happening over the past couple of years, finally, where people are starting to re-acknowledge the influence of alternative culture in the fashion scene, predominantly in the sneaker and streetwear world. Obviously, alt fashion has always been a thing. Gothic fashion has always been around. It is timeless, but there's been a big influence again on a mainstream level of alternative fashion influencing big designers like Balenciaga, and also the streetwear world and the sneaker world finally acknowledging the massive influence that the alternative world has on selling their sneakers and selling their clothes. In March, there's always an Air Max Day, and this year, Foot Locker in Australia and New Zealand decided to collaborate for Air Max Day with Nike and the hardcore band Speed. So there is a three-way collaboration advert for Air Max Day where Speed, the hardcore band, are wearing Nike Air Max, and it's just like a Speed hardcore show. So it's like a Nike hardcore show advert with Foot Locker. There's been some interesting opinions underneath the advert. Some hardcore kids don't think it's hardcore, don't think it's, punk rock to collaborate with a big brand like Nike and Foot Locker. However, I disagree. I understand where they're coming from, but the perspective that I have is that it's very authentic for Speed to wear Air Max. And they're literally doing something they already do. And they're getting money from a big brand who could use anybody in that campaign on Air Max Day. They could have chosen any musician, any kind of subculture, any kind of person, model, etc. to do that campaign. And they decided to choose Speed, the hardcore band, because they organically already wear Air Max, because hardcore kids have been wearing Air Max since day literal one. So that is why I decided to speak to John, because him and the rest of Youth of Today started that movement. I won't talk too much about it right now because we have a long interview to listen to where I talk about it with him. And I think it was 2 years ago, Youth of Today also collaborated with Nike on a one-off release, limited edition, with an Australian skate store. And it was so awesome. When it happened, I was like, oh my God, this is so sick. I couldn't get hold of them. They weren't in my size. So basically, it was a canvas Jordan 1. So I guess it was like a collaboration with Jordan as opposed to just like Nike. And yeah, we talk about this all in the interview, basically. It's just blown my mind. I saw that happening and then I was like, whoa, hang on. This is a year, 2 years later. And it's another thing that's happening with Nike in Australia. So something's happening here. There's someone in Nike Australia who is approving these things, and I'm like, who are you, bro? Let's be friends. So if you don't know much about me, I am a fashion stylist. I started my career predominantly working within sneakers and streetwear and really pushing a unisex aesthetic. I used to run a blog called Unisex Mode that was all about unisex fashion, and that kind of set me off in my career as a fashion stylist. I've worked with Nike, Foot Locker, JD, Puma, etc. and lots of other brands. And I style a lot of musicians, and I've tried over the past few years to kind of position myself with working with more alternative bands because that's what I love. I also love hip hop and pop as well, and I work with all different kinds of musicians, but I'm really happy that I now work with a lot more heavy alternative music. I work with bands like En Shikari. I work with No Offense, if you know who Noah is. He's big on YouTube. Very much my little pop punk king, love him, and lots of other people. And so it was just really exciting for me to start seeing this movement with the Adidas Korn collaboration last year, because I'm a big Adidas and Korn fan. I talked about that a lot on this channel and on the rest of my social media, and I'm just seeing all these things happen. I have consulted for big brands in the past and told them that I think they should be moving more into this direction. Not that they should be getting rid of pop and hip hop and grime artists and rap artists at all, because I love all of that. But like, you're missing out on this massive cultural group of people that like a huge, like, look at these bands, like they're huge, like Korn, they're literally like a massive global band. And you know, why did it take 30 years for us to collaborate with them? Anyway, people are listening to us now, things are happening, it's really exciting, and I'm basically going through the sneaker and streetwear world trying to find all of the like alternative hardcore people that work at these brands, because I've styled billboards for Foot Locker. If you go to the Marble Arch flagship store in London, there is a big billboard outside still that I styled a few years ago. I did like a campaign where it was like we did the imagery for a few of the flagships around the world, and like they stay there for like quite a few years, the imagery, which is really cool because every time I go I can see it. The same in Milan, but I actually haven't been back to Milan since that happened. Anyway, I digress. So I haven't seen it in real life, but my point being is that like I have worked with these brands before, and I would love to be working on campaigns with artists and bands like Speed, and I want to be putting them forward, and I creatively direct shoots as well. I used to be the fashion director at a magazine called Asbo, and before that was the fashion features editor at Notion magazine, and I now have my own style column in Kerrang, which I love. I love Kerrang deep within my heart and my soul ever since I was about 11 years old. So yeah, I'm just very excited to be doing these things and seeing these things happening, and basically get me on board with these brands and these campaigns. Let me authentically create campaigns for you. If you're Foot Locker, if you're Nike, Puma, Adidas, whatever. I have a huge portfolio, over 10 years worth of experience of working in the industry. But anyway, I digress. My point being, it's just really exciting. And I have definitely been othered and kind of pushed aside and been called weird and stuff within the sneaker and streetwear world, because like I'm a goth, I'm an emo, whatever. Even like, well, I'm a hardcore kid and like a new metal kid, really. But yeah, that definitely has happened over the past 10 years of my career. I've still been called like a weird kid, and that kind of like school mentality has carried on through into my adult life and in this career, because like hip hop and grime are very much at the forefront of sneakers and streetwear. So now it's becoming popular and fashionable, I am going to own this stuff and I'm going to talk about this. So we talk about a few different brands as well, which is really exciting. You'll see me throughout the interview talking to John about like our connections with different brands. So without further ado, let's get into the interview.
Hey,
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm freezing, but I'm good.
Oh, it's not really spring, is it? We're being lied to. In London, it's also very cold.
Yeah, I heard that London is just cold like 10 months out of the year.
I mean, we get pockets of it being nice, and it was nice this weekend, and now I've got the heating back on. So
I'm in this famous tattoo shop called American House. You ever heard of it? In Pennsylvania?
I don't know if I have. In Pennsylvania?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm not sure if I have. Are you getting it tattooed?
No, my son works here. The guy that owns it is this guy named Dan Santoro, who's a famous tattooer.
Yeah, I know who that is. I'm crap at like remembering names of things, but yeah, I know who he is. That's very cool. Yeah, I have seen you posting about your son like doing an apprenticeship, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Crushing it. He's doing good.
Have you been tattooed by him yet?
Not yet. Probably soon.
Got to get it soon.
Dying to tattoo me. He's laughing over there.
Very like exciting stuff as a dad, I'm sure.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's great. He's tattooed a bunch of my friends.
That is very cool. That is very cool. I wanted to ask you today about something we briefly chatted about on Instagram, which is, I mean, to sum it up, like the influence of sneakers in the hardcore scene, which kind of you guys low-key started back in the day. And you did this collaboration. Was it last year or the year before? Everything is very like time frames have just gone out the window over the past few years for me. The Nike collaboration with that, was it Supply Store in Australia?
Yeah.
And it was like the Youth of Today times Nike. Well, no, times Jordan brand, I guess.
Yeah.
And Nike and Supply Store, which was so sick. And that was in Australia. And then was that last year?
I think that was like 2 years ago, maybe.
2 years ago, yeah. Okay. And then this year, out of the blue on Air Max Day, also in Australia, which is why I'm like, what is happening in Nike Australia? I'm very intrigued. Where's the hardcore kid? Because like I want to know who you are, kind of thing. Yeah, there's a collaboration with Speed times Foot Locker times Nike for Air Max Day. So like again, I keep waking up to these things being like, is this really happening? Like who at Nike is approving this, which is sick because like this is the stuff that it makes sense to you and me, but like usually doesn't get signed off. So you've seen that now, right? You had a look at that,
I saw it and I was just amazed by it.
right?
It's so cool, actually, that they would do a commercial with just straight up hardcore in it.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Is that a real band that's in that?
Yeah. Speed. They're quite a big Australian hardcore band now.
Really?
I mean, when I say big, like obviously people in the hardcore scene, think of them as being a big band, like relatively speaking, obviously, they're still an underground DIY band. So yeah, that's why it was like so shocking, surprising, but also makes like total sense. And yeah, I wanted to know your thoughts. So I'm really glad that you think it's cool because for me, I think it's really cool. Just like when I saw you do that collaboration a couple of years ago with that store in Australia, it's a skate store, wasn't it? And I was like, well, this makes so much sense, but they never make canvas Jordans. Like it's really, really rare that they make those releases for a start. So for someone to do that and like make the connection like back with you guys, like how did that happen?
Well, they made canvas Jordans back in the 80s. And it was even back then, they were super hard to find. It was just like a very limited amount of these canvas Jordans. And Youth of Today had just gone vegetarian. And so somehow or other, Ray had a pair. And he's wearing them on the cover of Break Down the Walls. Those Air Jordans are the canvas Air Jordans. So I guess that guy from that skate shop had some connections with Nike, and he said, I want to do this thing, this band Youth Today, they sort of immortalized that shoe. Can we do a short run of them? And Nike actually, I don't know who was working at Nike, but they actually agreed. And it's so cool because I have an official Nike shirt, but it says Youth of Today on it, and it has Break Down the Walls on the back of it, which is pretty surreal.
It's so surreal. Like it's so sick. When I saw that, I was deeply jealous because for one, they didn't come in my size. And for two, it was in Australia. So it was like so hard to get hold of. But I was just so happy that it was happening because, yeah, I mean, for me as like a fan, that stuff resonates like so much because growing up and seeing, you guys wearing that kind of clothing inspired me to be really into streetwear. Like as a punk hardcore kid, I think I personally started as like, knowing what punk was before I knew what hardcore was, because that's kind of how it came about, but also because like my parents had punk records, like in their collections. And then that led me on to like learning about hardcore. And both my parents are very fashionable. They worked in a fashion industry. And like my dad really loved brands like Stussy, which made me kind of have that, love of streetwear and like sportswear, if that makes sense. And then you guys would rock that kind of look, from day one. So that kind of inspiration is it's so like obvious to us in our like hardcore bubble, if that makes sense. But outside of that, I feel like I'm constantly telling people like, because I work within the fashion industry, especially in streetwear and sneakers, and I'm constantly being like, when new things come out and people are talking about the next it sneaker, I'm like, when it's certainly like relevant to the scene that I'm in and other people don't know about it, they're like, what is she on about? So to see it kind of being taken on and like endorsed by brands like Nike is really cool. I can't really say too much. I probably don't know if I should say this out loud, but I have consulted for big brands and I've consulted for Nike before. And let's just say I've said stuff like this to them, and so it's really interesting to see it, to see stuff actually happen because they'll pay people like me to give them ideas, consult in like a general scale, give them kind of stuff that they're not doing. Let's say, for example, like at the moment, it's usually a hip hop artist, a grime artist that's in every campaign. So I will be like, how about you do something different? And that was quite a few years ago. So now I'm like, it's trending, like it's just fashionable again to be like an alt kid. Do you know what I mean when I say that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's just like a big umbrella term, you know, for all these subgenres. So it's fascinating and really exciting to me to see this happen. But I'm like, there's a thing happening in Australia specifically. What does that mean? Like, have you guys like, do you know a lot about like the hardcore scene in Australia or?
Youth of Today toured there.
Yeah.
We toured there once. It was probably like, I don't know, maybe like 6 years ago or something like that.
Okay.
A great tour. That was the only time I've ever been to Australia. I would love to go back. Judge almost went. We played Southeast Asia and Japan.
Mm-hmm.
We were supposed to, like, there was some talk about going to Australia, but we never really went.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I mean, for them to have that Nike commercial is pretty cutting edge. It's literally just like a hardcore Nike commercial, which is so cool for, you know, because all these like subgenres that, you know, I kind of grew up with, they all got huge. Like when I was a kid, you know, living in New York City, hip hop was totally underground. Metal was totally underground. Like bands like Metallica and Megadeth, they were like hardcore bands. They were playing tiny clubs. I saw Metallica on the Ride the Lightning tour at a tiny club. I mean, you know, they weren't bigger than any like punk or hardcore bands. And even like, you know, LL Cool J and, you know, Boogie Down Productions, all those bands were playing tiny places in New York City also. And it just seems like those genres got huge. And even like punk got big with, you know, Green Day and The Offspring and Rancid and stuff like that. But hardcore never really got that big. So I don't know if the music is just like too abrasive or too fast or whatever it is. But it's cool to see the mainstream kind of flirt a little with hardcore.
I really agree.
You know, it took 30 some odd years, but they're finally catching on that hardcore is cool.
Do you know what I think is happening? My generation are becoming adults and becoming the people in these, because I'm in my 30s, right? So that we're becoming the people in these brands. We're becoming the people that are like creating the content or creatively directing it or designing the collaborations. And that's why this is happening. Because if you think about it, not from like a music industry perspective, but from like a media perspective, like back in the 80s and the early 90s, you did have brands like Nike specifically, like you say, kind of flirting with alternative culture a little bit more. Obviously, like you say, there's some parts of that alternative culture that got really big, like metal. But let's say Red Hot Chili Peppers were in a big Nike campaign with Andre Agassi. Like I can't remember if it was the late 80s or early 90s. And that is one of the coolest campaigns that I have ever seen in my life. Tennis was cool. Like I don't really think tennis has been that cool ever since, you know, personally. And they did that at the same time with Jordan Brand, obviously with Michael Jordan and like hip hop artists and that side of culture. And they continued to do that, but they didn't continue to do it with the alternative rock side of music culture. And it's really weird. And there's always been this weird thing of like, yeah, like you say, huge bands like Metallica are massive. And certain genres blew up. But in terms of like big campaigns and big brands, you don't really see Metallica in, you know, and I haven't seen Metallica in a big campaign for, you know, years and years and years, or anyone younger that's like on that side of, you know, alternative music. So it is interesting to me, especially like, for example, the Adidas and Korn collaboration that happened last year.
Yeah.
That's like 30 years in the making as well. And that's because there is a designer at Adidas who is like my age and a marketing guy who's a little bit younger, and they love new metal and hardcore. So like they finally got to the position where they're like, here's this idea, like, please, can we do it? And they managed to get it signed off by Adidas. And I feel like that's what's happening with Nike now, where like the hardcore kids are trying to take these ideas, and it's happening in a smaller way, because obviously like Korn and Adidas was like a big major collaboration, but it's like these little things are happening with the collaboration that you guys did with Supply Store, and then now this Foot Locker campaign. And it's literally, like you say, it's a hardcore show. Apparently they were allowed to get their own like team to shoot it, so it's just like an authentic hardcore show shot by hardcore kids just wearing Nike Air Max, which they do anyway. But yeah, the next thing I wanted to ask you was, you've obviously made it apparent that you think it's a really cool thing, but there's so many aggro, angry little hardcore kids in the comments. And like, I am of your opinion. Like, I think this is so cool because I love hardcore. So for example, seeing You for Today collaboration happen a couple of years ago, I'm like, yes, this is what they deserve. You know, like anything where a band that I love can get exposure, make money from something, continue to make records or tour, like, is a positive thing in my opinion, because it also keeps you being like independent. And that's what I see with the Speed collaboration. It's like, well, Speed have just been directly given a bunch of money by Nike. Like, this is perfect. Like, now they can continue to make a new record and like be independent. But what do you think about all the aggro, angry, like hardcore kids in the comments?
You know, coming from a person in a band, like, they just don't understand. I remember when Youth of Today got a song in the movie The Girl Next Door. They played Break Down the Walls and Girl Next Door. And we were just so psyched. We were like, oh my God, we have a song in a major motion picture. You know, we were just like stoked. And the backlash on it was like, oh, you guys are sellouts, blah, blah, blah. I was like, what are you talking about, sellouts? I mean, you know, we're a straight edge band. How can we be sellouts? But, you know, people love to do that. I think it's like, you know, that Morrissey song, We Hate It When Our Friends Become Successful. I think it's kind of like that. It's almost like, you know, people are very, you know, it's almost like they take ownership of this scene and they want to keep it theirs. And if it kind of other people start to appreciate it, then it doesn't seem like theirs anymore. You know, there was another, you know, speaking about things that kind of like punk or hardcore stuff that breaks through every now and then to the mainstream. I don't know if you remember this, but it was either I think it was in the 90s. The Gap did all these ads with Henry Rollins from Black Flag. You remember seeing those?
No, I don't think
so.
It
was amazing. In New York City, every bus stop had a big picture of Henry Rollins in a black Gap shirt. And I was like, this is incredible. Like, the singer for Black Flag is all over the city, all over these billboards, and every bus stop. And kids just started like, sell out, Henry Rollins, you know, whatever. I mean, first of all, for Black Flag, I'm sure he didn't really make real money. He probably made more money off that Gap ad than he did with all of his years touring with Black Flag. It's like, give the guy a break. You know, it's cool that they recognize him, A, and then B, even if he does make money off of it, great. The guy's been kicking it in the van for, you know, 15 years. Let him have some money. You know what I mean?
Literally. This is my thing. I don't know, like, I've had many lives in my lifetime, right? I've been a musician, I've been in bands, like, you know, I've done all kinds of things. So maybe it's just a perspective that I understand what it's like. Maybe a lot of, I can't believe this, but, you know, maybe a lot of fans just truly don't understand what goes on inside the music industry. I think sometimes that's true, and they just don't understand the struggle and the hustle. They just think like, oh, you're a band, you're touring, like you must be making money. I style musicians, and I can tell you, for many years, I was predominantly working with hip hop, rap, and pop, and I still work with those genres. You know, I work with any kind of cool musician that is fun to work with as a stylist, but I try to position myself more with working with alternative music because I love that genre. I love hardcore, I love punk. You know, I just love heavy music. And I was like, am I ever going to make any money, you know, working with these bands? And yes, there are times where I am required or needed, you know, in like big music videos and that kind of thing. But they don't have money to like have a, you know, a creative director or stylist, or anybody help them like ongoing, like touring, that kind of stuff. It's not constant, or it's not money. And I don't think people realize that even for some of the bigger bands, especially if you're independent, yes, you get to keep your money, but they're putting that all back into touring. And then you get like Popeyes, who sign a record deal with a big label. They're selling their soul away a lot of the time, don't get me wrong, and you can be indebted to that record label for a long time, but they have so much more financial support, and no one gets angry with them, I guess, because they've already done that. They're already pop or whatever, but no one gets angry when they're in a Gap advert or a Nike advert. it doesn't make logical sense to me, because I'm like, we want these bands to stay independent. We want them to tour because we want to go to the shows, but we're mad at them when they get an opportunity to make money from something that's authentic. Like, I understand if it was a brand that just didn't make any sense. Like, if you guys suddenly just endorsed like a vodka brand or something, you know what I mean?
We did a McDonald's commercial or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And there is that line to be drawn. Like, I remember when they wanted to, we got offered a ton. Youth Today got offered a ton of money to have our songs in a Grand Theft Auto video game. And it was tempting. I mean, it was like a lot of money. And, I was talking with Ray, and I was like, do I really want my song in some video game where, like, people are like killing hookers, and, it's just such an awful game. And I just didn't want to have anything to do with it. And we ended up just like turning it down. But like you said, if it's something authentic, especially with the thing in Australia, it was just kind of cool that Nike recognized, here was this band, and they were championing this shoe when they were like little kids. Let's make another run for them, and we'll do this, and we'll do this cool shoe again to kind of celebrate that record. And just the fact that somebody from Nike would think like that,
Yeah.
I'm actually honored. It's not like I'm put off at all. I'm like, wow, great. You're recognizing this album cover, and you're recognizing that we did champion those sneakers back then. I mean, we wore Nike sneakers. I mean, back when Youth Today first started, everybody was wearing Doc Martens, and, nobody wore Nike sneakers. That was for jocks, but Youth Today came along. We had this kind of like jockish image. And so we wore all those sneakers, and then, people in the hardcore scene, started wearing those kind of sneakers.
That's it. Literally, this is what I talk about all the time. And like I say, within our hardcore bubble, most people know this stuff, right? But I'm like literally repeating this story. I feel like I'm insane. I'm like going around the fashion world being like, did you see this thing? Did you see this Air Max Day thing? And they're like, what are you talking about? Because I'm so surrounded by the sneaker world, especially. I'm like, no, this is happening. And you're going to talk about all this, like, other collaborations that are happening. So I'm going to bore the shit out of you until you listen to me that this important like record was notified 2 years ago, like in a collaboration with Nike. Is so relevant. And in Australia, like, people would have heard about it. But in the UK, that's, too far removed from them unless you care. And I'm very much like this, the person shouting about this in the industry. And like that whole story about, when people ask me, I get, you get all these interviews now on social media and whatever, like, what got you into sneakers? And like, why do you dress? What's your personal style? And I'm like, you probably know what punk is. Like, you probably have heard of hardcore punk. But the reason I love streetwear so much and like sports brands and sportswear is because I grew up kind of like wanting to be this punk kid and like listening to all the like British and American punk, then getting into hardcore. My dad wore Air Max and like Stussy and these brands. So then when I started to see you guys wearing those brands, and then I learned the history of like, you almost wanted to do the opposite of what the punk kids were doing. That was the whole like hardcore, especially straight edge hardcore movement. And like looking like a jock looked exactly the opposite of looking like a punk kid. It made so much sense to me, especially because as a girl that grew up in England in like the countryside, I really idolized a lot of American culture just because it was so far removed from me. No, just seeing like, I liked basketball, right? And for me in the UK, that was quite weird. I had to like start a team in my school because there wasn't one. And then having bands that were wearing like, Nike and sportswear and that kind of stuff, like it just kind of tied everything in and made sense. Whereas like I'd go to little punk shows in my local area and everybody's dressed like typical punks, wearing leather jackets and Doc Martens, like you say. And it was like this kind of thing that was happening at the same time, but people didn't understand unless they knew hardcore. And although it is massive, it's still small, like you say. And that's why all these kids are so obsessed with keeping it small, because it's been able to keep small for so long. But there's a huge movement happening, I think, and it has been happening for the past few years with hardcore, where the festivals are getting bigger and bigger every year. Like I'm sure you're just seeing it as you guys are touring, but we have this festival called Outbreak in the UK. Have you guys played Outbreak?
We were supposed to play it, and I was super disappointed because Ray couldn't do it. And I think Bane or Have Heart played that year, and it just looked incredible. To miss it. I've always wanted to play that.
it was so small before, and I loved it, and I still love it, but it, you know, at the risk of sounding like one of those little hardcore kids that's angry that things get bigger, I'm stoked because, as you know, it gets bigger and bigger, they have more budget to get, you know, more bands basically and have them all in one place, and it's all my favorite bands every year on one weekend. But it was amazing when it was like this tiny little hardcore show with like still loads of big bands there, but it was like all your friends in like a small space. And now it's getting bigger and it's a hip hop and hardcore festival, which I love, don't get me wrong, but it was just very overwhelming. The first time they changed to a much bigger venue, like going to it, it was so much is the best way to explain it. But I think I go to big festivals all the time, and I think that was my like little safe space festival. But I'm actually stoked on it now, and they have Heart playing this year, which is incredible. And yeah, I'm excited for the hardcore scene, that there are new kids that are not just in like our world, like people's sons and, you know, that kind of thing, and like your little cousin coming to the show because of you. There's just all these new eyes on this genre, and then huge brands are getting involved, and I'm personally excited to hopefully see more of these kind of collaborations. I want to be the person like directing and styling these campaigns, you know, in the UK. So I'm personally excited about it, and I'm really excited that you have a positive view and opinion of it, and hopefully people hearing you say that changes their minds, maybe.
Yeah, you know, it, like it or not, hardcore is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger every year. I mean, I can just see it playing the shows, you know, every year. It just seems like the shows just keep on getting bigger. I mean, we just played a whole bunch of shows in California that were like, you know, with Judging You Today, and were huge, like sold out, like, you know, super big shows. We play all these huge festival shows. And, you know, now with the success of bands like Turnstile, who are, you know, getting super mainstream, but they're still billed as a hardcore band, which is really cool. I mean, all those guys are hardcore kids.
Mm-hmm.
You never know, you know, in 5-10 years, hardcore could be the new cool thing. And it's weird too, because, you know, even like emo is huge now, like emo and screamo and all that stuff we listened to, like, you know, 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, that stuff is making a huge resurgence right now. It's just kind of a weird time for music, that all this music that, you know, I grew up playing and listening to is kind of, you know, really getting big.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Taking Back Sunday just played Coachella, and like hundreds of thousands of people like jumping up and down, singing along. It's weird. I saw their first show.
Did you?
I was in a band. We played I think it was their first show. It was either their first or second show. And now they're playing Coachella. It's just unbelievable.
It is, you know, I could see, I mean, I could see Turnstile playing. Did they play there already, actually? Maybe. I think Knocked Loose did last year.
Oh, did they really?
Yeah, there's something really random like that. And I remember being like, what in the hell? How is that going to go down? It's either Turnstile or Knocked Loose. Turnstile would make more sense, but I have this feeling that Knocked Loose did it, and I was like so shocked. I need to go back and like watch the crowd reaction. But yeah, very, very bizarre, exciting times in my opinion. And I mean, I hope you guys do play Outbreak maybe next year or a year in the near future. Obviously, you've all got so many bands that you're all in, and like the other stuff that you guys do as well. So I'm sure it is difficult trying to coordinate that, but I would like you to come play.
Yeah, it's on my bucket list. Outbreak Fest for sure.
Whether it's Judge or Youth of Today, you know, like we'll all be happy with either. Yeah, I'm so excited to speak to you about this. I think I've been shouting this stuff for so long in my little bubble in London, and trying to get brands to listen to me, to collaborate with more bands. And I just hope that this is the beginning of the future, and I get to choose bands to put into collaborations, because even just getting gifting for artists when I'm working with them, of course, there's always bands that want to like throw t-shirts at bands, but Nike, Adidas, Puma, all these kind of big brands that have money, like I just hope they're seeing, especially Adidas have started this, Nike are edging in. So I'm like hoping this is the beginning of a movement that stays, and it's not just them jumping on a bandwagon, but actually like indulging in alternative culture.
Well, if you consult for Nike, you should tell them that they should do another run of those Canvas Air Jordans because, I got them from my son and my daughter also, and a few of my friends. So I gave a bunch of pairs out. And when people see those, like when sneakerhead type kids see those, they'll just stop you in the street. Their jaw will drop like this, and they'll be like, "Oh my God, where did you get those Canvas Air Jordans?" Like they can't even believe that it's almost like they're the holy grail of sneakers or something. Like they can't even believe they exist. They've never seen them before, and they're just like super cool shoes.
Definitely. I did the like consulting for Nike. I haven't done it for like 5 or 6 years now. So hopefully Nike, someone watches this and like realizes they need to get the alternative kid back in. There's obviously somebody in Nike Australia that is a hardcore kid and a fan. So yeah, I hope that kind of alerts them to the fact that collaboration has worked and they should do it elsewhere in the UK and America, etc. And these things happen. Like everything is like circular, and I work with one brand, I go and I work with another brand, and the brand gets me back, and there can be years in between. But I think that this just makes sense that it's happening. And I have been that person for many years, going to all of the press days for brands, especially Nike, especially Adidas, and especially Dr. Martens. And I was like, oh, so have you guys done any new vegan ranges recently? Is there any sustainable ranges happening? Like, just annoying that you could see them being like, oh God, it's that girl again. Yeah, we have one vegan shoe. Like, here you go, Kitty, or whatever. And then as the years went on, they all started to do a lot more of that. And I was in those campaigns. I was in a campaign for Nike Air Max when they started their Move to Zero campaign, which is a whole sustainable thing. I was in like JD Sports. Do you have that in America? I'm not sure.
I don't think so.
It's like, yeah, it's very, very generic. Like it's everywhere. It's in every small town. It's like Foot Locker, but a little bit less cool. Like it's still cool. I don't know. It's not cool. It's just like your generic sports store, if that makes sense. It's cool as like a person to be in those campaigns, even though it's not like the coolest store in the world. Everyone's always stoked when they're in the campaigns. But yeah, I was in like boards, like in their London flagship store and stuff for that range when it came out, when they first launched it. And the same with Dr. Martens. They've always done vegan collections, but they've always been small, and they've really, really broadened them now. And when they first started to do that, I was in one of those campaigns. So the more you shout about these things, like the more people will resonate with you being part of that movement. And that's what I'm hoping with this now. And I have friends that have moved from working in Nike in London to America to sort of all over the world, and like you lose touch with them. But I know most people from the hardcore scene, and I am wondering if it's someone that I know from back in the day at shows in London that is in Nike approving these collaborations.
I'm sure. There's tons of hardcore kids that work for Vans now. They're always giving hardcore bands Vans. What's interesting is that sneaker that they make mostly running shoes from Italy. It's called the Dario. You know that sneaker?
No, I don't, weirdly.
You should look him up because the owner, the CEO, is a total like straight edge hardcore guy.
Okay.
He just sponsored that Shelter Youth of the Day Judge tour that we did in California.
Sick, yeah.
All like he gave me like 3 or 4 pairs of sneakers. He usually sends me sneakers like every few months, but he just dumped a whole bunch of sneakers on me, which is really cool. And he got sneakers for my kids too.
That's so cool. What's it called again?
Dario.
Oh, I do know. Yeah, hang on, wait. Let me spell it out for me.
Maybe I'm pronouncing it wrong. It's from Italy. It's like
Diadora. Is it that one? Diadora.
Let me look it up. Hold on a second.
I pronounce everything wrong. I am dyslexic, so I'm not the person to ask, but I know the brand Diadora.
Tell you in 1 second. Yeah, Diadora. That's it.
Diadora. That's interesting. Okay. This is what I'm doing. I'm like, I feel like I'm going through the sneaker industry, trying to find all the hardcore kids.
The Diodora are hardcore kid run company. It's pretty
I
cool.
love I love that. It's like the hundreds, you know, in the streetwear brands, there are so many that are founded by hardcore kids, like the hundreds with Bobby Hundreds.
Did you ever see that Judge Youth of Today Revelation
Yes,
they did? That was super cool.
so cool.
That stuff sold out in like 5 minutes.
I know.
Unbelievable. The stuff that we did with Noah too. Did you see that Youth Today Noah collaboration?
I have so much of that. I was on a job. This ties in very nicely with what we're talking about. I was on a job in Milan. This is not very normal for me, but it's not like I go abroad doing fancy jobs all the time. But for Foot Locker, I styled billboards for like their London store and their Milan store. And while we were there, I had my assistant while I was on set. I was like, you have to go on this website and you have to refresh it and you have to buy these jackets for me. So my assistant was on like the side, like literally buying me that collaboration. But luckily that whole team was a hardcore like team. It's so cool. That's what's so great about this, you know, this genre. But yeah, the photographer was like a straight edge hardcore dude. The producer was his wife, who was literally a straight edge hardcore fan. We all knew each other through that scene. And so we were all, it was okay. Like I wasn't getting in trouble for doing it. But yeah, it was a Foot Locker campaign, which is weird and ties into what we're talking about. And yes, I got a lot of that collaboration. The jacket, the blue one,
yeah,
the like chore jacket is one of my favorite things. And people go mad for that jacket.
and I wish I got one of those jackets. They sent me the wrong size, and I was like, no. And by that time, they were all sold out. I wish I had one of the jackets.
It sold out so quickly and I just spent all my money on it. I think I bought it from like the Noah site and the Dover Street Market site. So like I just kind of got everything I could get. But I had missed that Hundreds collaboration. My best friend used to work for the Hundreds. And so he got his hands on some of that collaboration. I knew about it because of him, that it was happening, but I just missed out on it. And so I was like, I am not missing out on this Noah collaboration. But yeah,
that Hundreds one was very interesting because Bobby Hundreds is obviously a big player in the streetwear scene, and I remember talking on the phone with him, and he was like, "You have no idea how much Youth Today and straight edge culture influenced like streetwear culture."
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these people that own these streetwear companies, they come from the hardcore scene. They know all about Youth Today. They know all about like that kind of like. It's edgy, but it's clean cut kind of look. And he was like, that stuff really just comes from like your whole youth crewy kind of scene.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, you guys made a big kind of footprint in the whole streetwear thing. And I was like, thanks for telling me because I had no idea.
Right. Yeah. That's what I mean.
It's kind of cool that because like I said, like you were saying before, everybody was dressing punk. We were straight edge. We wanted to kind of like go the opposite of the way that kind of nihilistic punk scene was going. So we just dressed different also. And it's kind of cool that look became like a thing. Like
synonymous with hardcore. Like straight edge hardcore especially, and that whole youth crew movement, but like is literally synonymous with hardcore in general. I went to university in South Wales, so like Cardiff, that area. Do you know, you heard of it? And we had a massive hardcore scene in Newport, especially, which is where my campus was. And like, yeah, we were all like streetwear and sneaker kind of obsessed, like not in like a crazy way, and we were hardcore kids going to these like little shows. There's a venue that's really famous, or two, one called TJ's, but it doesn't exist anymore, and one called Le Pub. And Le Pub used to be, it's bigger now, but it used to be 120 capacity. And we used to see every band that you can name, you know what I mean? Like in this 120 capacity show, wearing our like Air Max that we'd all cleaned the night before. We were like, that whole kind of clean look and clean movement was such a thing. And that's mad because I was in Wales and you started this in America and New York. You know what I mean? Like it's had a massive impact on like fashion.
Even if we wore Vans was totally underground. You couldn't buy them in stores. You had to like mail order them and like with cash in the envelope to get your Vans. They would come like 6 months later. Every single pair of Vans was custom. You would literally like check off the boxes of like what color checkers you want, checkered board stuff you wanted.
Wow.
And so when we were wearing those sneakers, like I remember when I was in high school and I would wear Vans, I would get mercilessly made fun of. Like, people just couldn't wrap their heads around those sneakers. So it's kind of like edifying for me how Vans is now. all those kids that probably made fun of me for wearing Vans in high school are probably buying their kids Vans now.
And probably wearing them themselves, or did at one point.
Yeah, probably.
That's the whole thing about like the alternative scene in general becoming so much bigger now, is that like everyone's saying, especially my generation, and it's funny hearing you say that with your generation as well, of like all the kids that bullied me in school for being like a punk kid, an alternative kid, an emo, whatever. Now they're all trying to dress like it because it's like fashionable.
Yeah.
It is interesting. And to see Vans especially, I don't know if you've seen this, but I work with them a lot as well, and they've had a big push, especially the past couple of years, into hip hop. And they've got all their brand ambassadors mostly are like grime, rap, hip hop, which is great. And I love those genres as well. But I think they were like, damn, like we need to do something different. And I just hope that they don't lose their integrity with like alternative music. I don't think they are. I think sometimes there's been a few conversations where I've been like, why would you not want to get involved with this scene, or like, stuff like that that's like so authentic to you. And it's just a money thing where everybody is having a hard time right now, like financially, and brands have to be really careful with how much they're like endorsing and giving out. And they're trying really hard, I guess, to kind of grab onto every scene and like have a foot in every door. So I'm glad that you are telling me they're still gifting a lot of hardcore bands, because in the UK, just say it's not been as easy. And I'm kind of the go-between. Like I'm the person that organizes a lot of that stuff. So hopefully the UK starts to follow suit again.
Yeah, I've always wanted to do a Vans Youth of Today collab shoe. That's got to happen one of these years.
That would be the sickest thing ever. And I did find out, I did a collaboration personally with them recently, and just like some content creation for them. And the guy who organized it, I don't know much about him, but because we've only been emailing, but basically they gave me a mood board and it was very clean cut. So I was like, okay, I won't go like too edgy with it or whatever. And when I gave them like the content back, they were like, well, he specifically was like, oh, I really wanted you to be more punk with this. And I was like, bro, like all the imagery and stuff, like everything you said was like the opposite. And I didn't want to push the boundaries too much. But like, luckily, I also shot some other images. So like, here they are. And I was wearing like, I can't remember, like a Corn t-shirt. It was a bit more like alternative. And they were like, okay, sick. This is great. And then I found out the other day that he is like a big hardcore fan. So I haven't spoken to him again since, but like I just found this out and I was like, that makes sense as to why he said that to me. So he's someone that I'm like, okay, I need to tap you up more and find out like who you are, like what you're doing. Like you're obviously the alternative kid to go to now in Vans, which is really good to hear because he's in charge of like marketing stuff, you know.
There's definitely a few hardcore kids at Vans. Last year on my birthday, some hardcore kid that works there was like, "Hey, Purcell, it's your birthday. I want to give you a present. What's your address?" And I was like, "Oh, cool." He's like, "I work at Vans. I want to send you a present. What's your address?" So I gave my address, and like months later, probably like 3 months later, I get this box and I open it up, and it's Judge Vans.
What?
Really cool. They were like black and gray slip-on Vans with like gray Judge hammers on them.
What? That's so sick.
They were so cool. Yeah. So I got those for Vans.
He just made them for you, like a one-off.
Yeah, for my birthday.
That's so sick.
Yeah, they're really cool. Like I would wear them to shows, and people were like, "Where can I buy those?" I was like, "You can't."
And I love that. I love that they do stuff like that. But I hope that's kind of a gateway into them maybe thinking about doing proper collaborations, you know, because this is the thing that I think they're starting to realize. And it's not the people like this dude at Vans that you're talking about. It's the brand, you know, that he has to get signed off and approval. They're starting to realize that we fucking love hardcore and we have money to spend. Like, I mean, I don't mean we have loads of money, but I mean, we're adults now. Do you know what I mean? Like we have adult money. We want to buy these things. And like, as sneakerheads because you guys got us into that shit. That's what we've all become. You know, it's so true. There are so many like hardcore kids that just have stupid amounts of sneakers, but like these are the sneakers that we want. Like I'm like going through it now, like selling loads of my trainers, being like, I don't need this, I don't need this. But like the stuff I'm buying is like the Turnstile Converse collaboration. I don't know if you saw that, but they did that recently.
Seen those.
Sick. And like the Adidas Corn collaboration, you know, anything like that, because I'm like, that actually resonates with me. And then it's like stuff that people wore, you know, specifically in certain music videos or like certain shows that like you guys on the front of the record, like that kind of stuff is like what we as fans are like, take my money, you know what I mean? Wow. So I hope that these brands are starting to like put two and two together and realize that I get that there's a lot of money in like hip hop and those collaborations will continue and they're great, but like there's other people that really, really love these bands that will pay for these sneaker collaborations. So I think this is a movement. And also from a music perspective, it's so great to see all of these new bands coming out and being successful. Like Cowell, do you know Cowell?
Yeah, sure. They're huge.
Yeah.
They're blowing up.
Exactly. This is what I mean. And like, it's so cool. Well, it's cool to see a woman, you know, like and more women in the hardcore scene, but just to see these bands like getting recognition by more people and the hardcore scene in general just being acknowledged is very sick. So what we want is you guys to have a Nike collaboration and a Vans collaboration.
Exactly. That would be awesome. I'm waiting for that day. Yeah, it's so true that hardcore kids are obsessed with sneakers.
It's true.
I have a closet full of sneakers. It's almost a little embarrassing. I got a closet full of sneakers. I got a closet full of t-shirts.
Same. I mean, I don't know. I kind of blame you guys for it. Opening that pathway into us all wanting to dress like more sporty, and like sporty leads to streetwear, and streetwear just happens to lead to an obsession. And if you like bands, you're gonna have loads of t-shirts because you love band merch, you know. So it goes hand in hand.
Well, you know, I think the reason why we were so into sneakers is because, you know, we were trying to create like a separate identity.
Mm-hmm.
You know, say like every revolution needs a uniform.
Mm-hmm.
We were trying to create this straight edge revolution. So, you know, we were wearing things that were different that would kind of set us apart and give us like an identity. It was almost like part of like saying like, you know, when you put a pair of, you know, 1988, 89, when you put a pair of, you know, Vans on, that was saying I'm straight edge. Mm-hmm. I'm not drunk, I don't drink, I don't do drugs, I'm straight edge. See, I got Vans on my feet. Mm-hmm. So it was part of the whole message. Even, you know, the way that we looked was you know, became almost synonymous with that kind of straight edge message. So that's why they were so important to us. It wasn't just because we thought they were cool sneakers, because they kind of reflected who we were as this kind of movement of people.
Yeah, exactly. That's the message that like I always try to explain when people don't really understand the difference between like punk and hardcore, because you know how people say punk hardcore, and like trying to explain to people who don't listen to punk or hardcore, or like their knowledge of punk is like the Sex Pistols, you know. And I'd be like, well, you know, the difference is musically this, and like the whole straight edge movement is kind of the beginning of the hardcore scene. And the reason they dress different is because they wanted to identify as looking completely different. That is so like obvious, if that makes sense. If you look at like just pictures of like different shows from that time of like you guys and then like punk bands, and it made such an impact, you know, historically and to this modern day, like we've been saying, on the fans who are literally like sneaker wearing streetwear kids. And it's really obvious and people know that. But like I say, when I'm in the fashion industry, especially, where it's just like what is in fashion right now, what is trending right now, and then you have these little pockets of like the sneaker scene and the streetwear scene, and then like the high-end fashion scene, even in the sneaker world, I guess it's kind of obvious, but like that whole hip hop movement, like Jordan 1s and like Michael Jordan and like the hip hop that kind of goes alongside that is always, you know, at the forefront of that scene, which makes sense. And I love all of that stuff too. And I'm always kind of trying to be like, yo, there's this whole other scene that completely got people into like sneakers and streetwear, especially sneakers, which is hardcore, especially straight edge hardcore and youth of today. And I guess people see that because I wear the clothes, and then there's a few other people like me in that scene that kind of like, you know, champion that stuff, but it's still like completely alien to some people. It's still like a new thing that, you know, then I guess if you don't listen to heavy music, you don't have a clue. And also like straight edge, and it is in like a movement, people get like set, like they kind of understand what that means, like almost separate to the music, but like it being together is like, I don't know. I feel like a like I'm just trying to like tell people what it means.
It would be really cool if, you know, some of these bigger companies like, you know, Nike and so on, if they actually collaborated with hardcore bands and they made sneakers that didn't have leather on them.
Yes, exactly.
You know, like minimal product free. It would be cool to do like classic sneakers, but make them like animal product free, like no stuff. That would be awesome.
Definitely. I think it has to be the case. And you know what? They've done it with oh my god, why is her name gone out of my head? Billie Eilish. I don't know if you know and you've seen any of that, but Nike have done collaborations with her, and she's vegan, so she made them make vegan version, like make vegan trainers for her collaboration. So
that's so cool.
It's so cool.
Then it becomes more than a sneaker, you know. Then it becomes sort of like you're wearing your ideology on your feet.
Exactly.
I like
100%. And they've also done it with Sean Wotherspoon. Do you know who that is?
No.
So he is a sneakerhead who he's got stores. They're like vintage stores. So he's kind of like a secondhand thrifting, like vintage, like, I don't know, God, basically. He loves like movies and like memorabilia, that kind of stuff. And he just got really, really famous from, he used to make I think he still makes a YouTube show in his stores. So I guess he started with just like thrifting and selling at like fairs in America, and then like doing pop-up shops, and now he's got like a bunch of stores in like LA and different parts of America, and his YouTube show got really big, and then brands started to collaborate with him, and he's done mad stuff, and he's plant-based, and that's his thing. And I kind of like align with him in that respect because I'm vegan, but it's so hard when you work in this industry, so I try to say plant-based just because, you know, it is hard. Sometimes I have to work with brands that do use leather, because if I get booked to style a campaign, like I have to pay my bills. But if I personally do something, like if I was to collaborate with a brand, I'd make them make it vegan, because that's what's important to me, which is why doing those campaigns I told you about before with like Nike and Dr. Martens, etc., was like so important to me, because it was when they like actually started to make that movement happen. You can see it's possible. But yeah, he's done Nike, Asics, Adidas, and they've all been vegan collaborations. But then he gets taken on press trips, which is like stuff that I do, where they're like, oh, here's like, make a one-off sneaker for the day, and they give him like sustainable materials, but it might be like secondhand leather, that kind of thing. But he's like getting inside the industry, which is always my mentality, to like not say no to everything, but also like push your message, and like where it's possible, make it happen. So I love his collaborations. He's one to watch, basically, if you like vegan stuff.
That's super cool.
It's so cool.
Yeah, Billie Eilish is really loud and proud on the vegan thing. It's awesome.
It's so cool because she's fucking huge, you know, like to carry it through into your collaborations and have that kind of mentality and that strength, I suppose, to say no, like this is the collaboration I want to do. It can be really hard. So I'm so glad that she stood firm with that kind of stuff. It's the same with like beauty products and beauty brands. Like I personally won't work with any brand that isn't cruelty free, and like she's the same, which is so sick. But then, you know, she'll wear Gucci and stuff like that. And I think that's the thing of like kind of finding what works for you within these scenes, yeah, I think that makes sense. Like she'll probably not wear leather from Gucci, for example, but like she'll wear big brands. And I think that's about like, if she was ever to get a Gucci collaboration, she'd make it vegan, which would be really cool.
Sure. That would be cool.
Well, thank you for talking to me. I really appreciate it.
Very interesting. Oh, you know what? It's almost like serendipitous. I got this, my phone was blowing up this morning.
Uh-huh.
Have you ever heard of This guy from New York called Dye Workwear.
Well, how do you spell it? Like DIEDYE?
_workwear on Instagram.
No, I don't think so.
Supposedly he's like a big kind of fashion influencer in New York City.
Okay.
And he just put out a Twitter in response to somebody else's Twitter. Somebody put a thing on, some big like fashion guy put a thing on Twitter. He's like, if you're over the age of 15 and you're not at a beach or within 20 feet of a pool, you should never wear shorts. Go home and put on a pair of pants like an adult or something like that. And then the guy put in response, this like New York City influencer guy said, that's not true. Shorts are really cool. Over the years, a lot of cool people have worn shorts, and shorts are as fashionable as pants are, something like that. And then he put a picture of all these like models wearing shorts, and then he put a picture of me from today wearing shorts. So telling me about it. And I was like, oh, I got to tell her on that.
That's so mad. No, send me his thing on Instagram so I can check it out.
Yeah.
I might have seen his face, like that's the thing with the internet, is a lot of influence where like I recognize their face, but I don't remember their names.
Yeah, if you I think you have to go to his, I think it's on his Twitter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's just Dye Workwear, DIE Workwear on Twitter.
Okay.
Dye Workwear, go check it out.
I'll check it out. That's interesting. I mean, but this is my thing. Like, there are so many people that know that influence. So that's just another example of it, isn't it?
And he must have some kind of like connection with the hardcore scene.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
Yeah. There's so many people out there that do. And I think like about 10 years ago, the streetwear scene was so like new and exciting. Obviously, streetwear's been around forever. But I mean, when Hypebeast and High Stability were really like blowing up, they weren't big 10 years ago, and that's like at their peak about 10 years ago. And there were, I don't know, all different kinds of kids within the scene. I feel like it just kind of filtered out into like this whole like Travis Scott, Nike collaborations being just like the peak of everything, and Adidas, Yeezy, and like all the kind of alternative kids, a lot of them kind of, went their other way. And I think it's great to see these collaborations have continued to happen, like for the core audience, like the hundreds, and the Noah collaboration, because again, they're both brands owned by hardcore fans, right?
Yeah.
And that's still been happening. Like the core audience has always been there, and now it's kind of getting more recognition. So yeah, I think, have you heard of Brain Dead? You haven't done a collaboration with them, have you?
No, I've never heard of them.
Oh, you should check them out. They love music, and they love hardcore and like heavy music. I know there's like a few collaborations coming out this year with some cool brands, or there's talks of, I don't know if they've been confirmed yet, but they did a collaboration with Korn last year. And before that, they've done a lot of more like independent stuff. They did, I cannot remember which festival it was. You would either have played it or know it, but there was a festival last summer in America, and it was a hardcore festival, or like it had loads of hardcore bands on, and they did like a whole load of collaborations with the bands there. But they're really cool brand. It's expensive. It's like Noah. It's like expensive stuff. It's not, but it's incredible quality. And just at the root of it is obviously a bunch of like music fans, which is really cool. So yeah, I would not be surprised if one day they reach out to you guys.
Yeah, give us some plugs when you're consulting.
I will do. And my thing is that I'm like, obviously I'm based in London, so it has to be something based somehow, around here. But I want to be styling those campaigns, or like creatively directing, putting those campaigns together. I'm just trying to get the brands to let me do that, because I style billboards for like Foot Locker, and I've styled campaigns for Nike before, and Puma and stuff. So I'm just kind of like wanting someone to help me, like let me make the decisions, basically.
Did you go to that show? Remember when did you know that Youth Today did that collaboration with Our Legacy from Sweden? That's Swedish.
Yeah, I do know that brand. Do you know I've got a column in Kerrang now? I don't know if you would know that, but I have my own column in Kerrang magazine, and I just wrote about their like latest collection. But I don't think I know that you guys did this collaboration.
Yeah, we did a collaboration, and they had the opening of it at the Vans store in London, and Youth Today played.
I came. Wait, I did not remember that. So in my head, it was just like a Vans show. But there was a collaboration. Was it a shoe?
With our legacy, they did special like Vans edition, our legacy stuff, and Youth Today shirts, and
Yeah, I was there. I was at that show. It was in central London, wasn't it?
yeah, and they had the downstairs where they had all the clothes were downstairs.
Yeah, shit. I completely forgot that was in my head. It was just a Vans collaboration.
It was actually a Vans Our Legacy collaboration, but they did some stuff with Youth Today too.
Yeah,
It was super
so
cool.
good. What? It's so mad how many like shows happen and it all just gets blurred into your head. But yes,
That was a great show, wasn't it?
that was a sick show because it was so intense. Like it was small, we're literally in a store. It was like being at a show back in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was so sick. That was how long ago was that? Because I feel like it was when I was quite new to London.
That was at least, that must have been like 10 years ago.
Yeah, this is what I'm thinking. Yeah.
And probably like 8 or something like that.
Yeah. Somewhere, but I feel like it's like 8, 9 years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely forgot about that.
Yeah,
That was so mad. I feel like I need to find the footage on my memories somewhere in my phone now.
They made special like 3/4 Vans for those shows, and it's the same thing when I wear those around New York City. People are just like, they stop me in the street. They're like, "What is that sneaker? Oh my God, where did you get it?"
That's so sick. Yeah, I can't even remember. I remember t-shirts, but I can't even remember what they looked like. I want to go and like find those pictures now because
one that looked like a Uniform Choice shirt, but it said Our Legacy. They were all kind of like hardcore
inspired.
Yeah,
that makes so much sense. Their recent collection was like super kind of goth. It was like they made it sound really like fancy, but it was like watching horror movies in the summer and like the light and the dark repelling each other and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, this is just like an expensive version of what goth kids wear. So I'm going to put this in my crime column. It's a very cool collection.
The owner is a total straight edge hardcore kid.
Sick.
Yeah, he was in that band The Change. You ever heard of that band?
Yeah.
And he was also a Shelter roadie. He roadied for Shelter.
Really? That's so you knew him before?
Does this like clothing company? It just absolutely blows up.
Yeah, it's so high fashion.
Yeah, it's like high fashion.
Yeah, it's expensive stuff.
Yeah, it does like suits and everything.
That's cool. So interesting because the PR, like I would just get sent like releases, like information, like this collection is coming out, blah, blah, blah. And they're quite like, a high-end fancy fashion PR agency. And I was like, I'm just going to put this in my crime column. I emailed them to ask for some more information and they didn't get back to me. And then I just found out the information myself and I just wrote it. And then I emailed it to them like, hey, this is in like the new crime column. And they were like, oh, thanks. But I kind of felt like the PR didn't really care that much. You know what I mean? But I feel happy that hopefully that would have filtered back to him and he'd be like, oh, sick, we're in Kerrang magazine,
Yeah, he would definitely be stoked if he knew that they got mentioned in Kerrang.
Yeah, I did like a whole piece and I do about 5 like pieces per article. So it'd be like 5 different collections. And I try to make them collaborations if possible, but if not, it's just stuff that I think that like the Kerrang readers would like that they probably won't have heard of yet. So yeah, if you ever hear of any collaboration, if you guys do any collaborations, please let me know so that I can.
Yeah, I'll let you know. I'll look for your column in Kerrang too. That's cool.
Yeah, thank you. I can. It's online, so I can send you the link if you're interested.
Oh, yeah, send me the link.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much for chatting to me, and hopefully, I see you guys playing in the UK soon.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, I'll let you know.
All right. Have a good afternoon. See you later.
You too.
Bye.
Oh my God, when John was talking about Diadora, also, like, I pronounce things wrong all the time. Maybe I'm wrong, but I've always called it Diadora. I was so excited because I did not know this, and that's another hardcore kid within the sneaker industry that, like, I want to find, and it's really exciting to hear that is happening. So far, I know there are alternative hardcore metal fans at Adidas, and I know who they are. I don't know whether I should shout them out on here. Like, I don't know, but there is a very cool couple of dudes that work at Adidas right now that put together the Korn collaboration and made it happen. And they're really nice dudes, and I'm really happy that I've made like contact with them last year. So I know that they're there. I know that there is, well, one of my old mates went off to work at Nike in America ages ago, and he's a hardcore kid, and yeah, he's floating about there somewhere. But there's obviously someone in Australia in Nike, and then we've got Diadora. So like, I'm gonna go around and find all these people. So guys, what do you think? I know everybody's gonna have different opinions on this, but as I said in the video, I think that it's better that bands can take money from a brand that they would authentically already wear, rather than selling their soul away to a record deal that they could get stuck in for a very long time. Obviously, sometimes there are good record deals, so you know, it really depends, but would love to know your thoughts. Who would you like to see me interview next time? Let me know in the comments. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It means so much to me. I really, really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next video. Peace out.